Hey, hi guys, hi everyone. Hello, welcome to my class. Give me a second. I can see some background blur, so let me rectify that and then we will start. Okay. So I hope I'm visible, right? Hi, Sharath. Hey, hi guys. Am I audible? Can anyone please put yes or no in the chat? So we'll be starting in few minutes. Okay. So today, this is the first lecture that we'll be having related to JavaScript. And what we'll be doing is we'll be starting the basics, introduction to JavaScript, maybe what variables are. But before we start, I can see a lot of people, typing yes in the chat as well. That's very good to see as well. So let me share my screen, and I hope people are going to, confirm in the chat whether my screen is visible or not. Okay. So give me a second, and then we'll start. Is my screen visible, guys? Hey, hi Dhruv, hi Sharath, hi Anmol, hi everyone, hi Saurav, hi Pranav. Perfect, great. I'm doing great. I'm doing great, Rishabh. What about you? What about everyone? Everyone doing good? Perfect, great. Hey Jishnu, hi Jishnu. Glad to see you here. So let's not waste our time, although I'm expecting more people to join. Meanwhile, they join. Let me start with basics of JavaScript and what we are going to do in today's class. Okay. Now, let's try to understand what we mean when we say JavaScript. Okay. But before I talk about what JavaScript is, let's actually dive a little bit deep into what web development is, right? Every time that whenever anyone goes on the internet, at least I would expect that all of you have used Google, www.google.com. What's that? For us, it's a website, right? Amazon.in, it's a website over there. Lot of people might have a little bit of confusion in their minds, maybe how this website is created, what are the different technologies that people have used in order to create a website. We'll be discussing all of that. Okay. When I talk about web development, it is simply a development, or we can say it's simply a technique or set of technologies that we use in order to create a website. Okay. And most of you already might know that whenever we try to create this website, we use basic language like HTML, we use CSS, and then later on we use this language which is called JavaScript, right? So screen sharing is not visible. In that case, give me a second. Let me reshare it. Okay. Give me a second. I can see a lot of people are saying, screen sharing is not. Give me a second. Give me a second. What about now? Is this visible now? Is it visible now? Give me a yes or no in the chat. No, it's not, right? No, give me a second as well in that case. So there might be some issues. So I'm not able to share my screen. Although I'm currently sharing, but it's not visible to anyone, right? Perfect. There's some problem. Okay. So allow me some time. I will rectify this issue. Okay, and then I will be back. Okay. Give me some time. So I can see I'm not able to share my screen. Although I am doing that, I am currently sharing everything, but it's not visible to anyone, right? So let me again share it. What about now? Is it visible? No, it's not, right? No, it's not visible. No, it's not. It's not. Give me a second. Okay, give me a second. I can see like it was there for a second, but now it's again not visible. Something happened, right? So I guess there are some technical issues that I am facing. I'm not able to share my screen over here, so I have to connect with my technical team and let's see, what solution they might, give me, right? So allow me some time. Yes, it was visible for a sec, right, in between. So let's see what we can do. Give me some time, okay? And I'm so sorry for this, inconvenience that we are facing. Okay. Okay, guys. So I guess it is visible now, right? Perfect. Is it visible now? Yes, it is. It is. It is. So there were some technical issues, and thanks to technical team, they have rectified it. Okay. So now let's come back to what we are supposed to discuss and what we were discussing actually. Okay. And I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. Right now, let's again restart and let's again talk about this website that we were talking about. Right. Most of you already know here that whenever we try to create a website, we use some of the stack that actually creates this website that we can see in our daily day-to-day life on laptops, mobile phones, and different devices. But the point of interest that we have over here is actually this JavaScript. Okay. Now, in order to understand what is JavaScript is and why do we use it in website creation, let's talk about how many types of websites do we have. We have usually two types of websites, right? Number one is called static website. Number two is called a dynamic websites. Okay. Now let's try to understand what static is and what dynamic is, and automatically you will be able to understand what is the difference between these two and how why we use JavaScript. Okay, let's take an example. Let's say that Rishabh over here is trying to create a website and he wants to create a basic calculator. Okay, now all of you might have seen what calculator looks like, right? What do we need in a calculator? We need simply some buttons. Whenever we talk about those buttons, these buttons simply come in the structure of a web page, right? For example, I need for a calculator these numbers. So for example, for calculator I need to do arithmetic operations, addition, subtraction, which means I must have numbers there so that I can perform these operations. But can I say that these numbers that might be visible on my web page is actually part of structure of that web page? These buttons, these numbers over there, all these numbers and arithmetic operations, they are nothing but actually content that might be visible on my web page. And whenever we talk about this content over here, we actually talk about HTML. My content on my web page will be available over there because of a markup language which is called HTML. It stands for hypertext markup language, which you might already know as well. I am pretty much sure. Okay, great. Now, can anyone tell me in the chat why is it called markup language? Right? Is it a programming language? The answer is of course not. It is not a programming language. Remember, markup languages are all those languages with help of which what we can do is we can structure text over there. Usually, when HTML was introduced, there were few minimum tags over there that we used, with which we used to actually create this content. But let's talk about that later because that's not what we are here for. Okay. After that, have you ever seen, guys, yes or no in the chat? Have you ever seen a calculator that looks like this, in which you see all these numbers, all these arithmetic operations in a single line? Yes or no in the chat? Yes or no in the chat? Very good. No, we don't see it. We actually see a better version of it usually. And what is that better version? That better version is that we write one, two, three, something like this. The calculator that we are used of is nothing but actually something like this, right? So can I say right now over here, this type of calculator is a better version of what we created with HTML? Of course, yes. Which means right now this calculator has these buttons, this content properly orientated, properly designed. And whenever we talk about implementing design inside the content that we created using HTML, we talk about another type of language. We can say it is called CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. What does it stand for? Cascading style sheets. Okay. Now, let's not talk about that as well. We understood what HTML is, we understood what CSS is. But my point of interest over here is this. What's that? That if somehow I click on this 2 will be displayed over here. If somehow I click on this multiply will be here. Let's suppose if I click on, let's suppose 8 will be over here. But as soon as I click on this equal to, what should be displayed in front of this equal to? By that I mean, what should be the answer of this particular arithmetic operation? Come on in the chat. Very good. Right? So it should be simply 16, right? But the question is, does my web page know what multiplication mean? At this point of time, the website which we have created using HTML plus CSS, does it know what logic is? The answer is of course no. So when we have not implemented logic inside our web pages, those type of web pages are called static web pages. They are called static web pages. They don't have any functionality, they don't have any logic inside them. But now, if we want to include these functionalities, some logic inside my web page, we have a language, programming language that we have to use, and that programming language, guys, is called JavaScript. Okay, so can I right now say over here that in order to implement dynamicality inside our websites, we have to use a programming language over there, which is called JavaScript. So now JavaScript is the first programming language that we will use inside our web development, with which we can create a different type of websites, which means dynamic websites. So tell me in the chat, guys, dynamic websites are possible because of come on in the chat, everyone. Dynamic websites are possible because of JavaScript. Very good. Now let's move a little bit forward and now let's understand what this JavaScript is. Okay, what this JavaScript is. Guys, if you go on the maybe internet, you might find documentation of this JavaScript. You might see that JavaScript, it says that JavaScript is single threaded synchronous programming language. Single threaded synchronous programming language. Okay, first of all, let's try to understand what programming language is, because I can see in the participants section over there, there are a lot of people who have never heard programming language before. So for them, let's try to understand what programming is. Okay, everyone over here actually has at least used mobile phones, right? You might have visited websites, you might have played games, okay, all those things, right? So, can I say whenever you try to visit a website, you are actually performing a task? When you are playing a game, you are actually performing a task. So this task is nothing but we are actually trying to achieve an objective. We have an outcome over there that we want to achieve, and in order to achieve this task, this object, we actually follow some set of instructions. And whenever we follow set of instructions to perform a task so that we can get a proper outcome over there, that is called over there program. So we write a program to complete that task, and a language that we use in our programming, it is called a programming language. If I remember correctly, there are almost more than 700 programming languages. I might be not correct over here, but this is these are the number of languages that we have in this universe currently. Okay, now let's come back to this particular thing. So when I say instructions, what do I mean by that? Okay. Let's suppose everyone over here has a mobile phone. Okay. By that mobile phone, in that mobile phone, what you need to do is you need to, let's suppose, open your camera. What are you going to do? The first step that you will do is you will unlock your mobile phone. Second thing, you will find the camera app. Third thing, you will do whatever you want to do with that camera app. But can you directly take a picture without opening camera app? The answer is of course no. So even we are following these set of instructions over there to perform a task, but we must understand a proper sequence should be there as well. If you don't follow a proper sequence, you won't be able to perform a task over there. And that's what we call as programming. That's what we call as programming language as well. Now let's come back to the definition that we just discussed, which is JavaScript is single threaded. What do I mean by single threaded over here? Single threaded programming language. Remember, when we talk about instructions, there will be lot of instructions. Let's suppose there are thousand lines of code that I might have written over there to perform a specific task. So when I say it is a single threaded, it simply means that programming code lines will be executed line by line, which means when this is executed, then only it will move to the next line. That's what single threaded means. So it will execute a programming statement one by one, one by one. Will it execute this line of code without these guys? Yes or no in the chat? Yes or no in the chat? So if I talk about JavaScript, if there are 1,000 lines of code, will my 500th line be executed directly without executing the first 419th? What do you think about that? Remember, we have to understand that JavaScript is single threaded, which means it is going to execute everything single threadedly. But later on in this course, maybe on our last day, we will see there's also one another type of JavaScript which is called asynchronous. But let's go to that later on. Okay. Right now, we are talking about pure JavaScript. So, pure JavaScript simply means that every line will be executed line by line. Let's move a little bit forward. Okay. Now let's come back what I discussed few seconds ago. What was that? That I am trying to perform a task. In the example that I took, I had calculator, right? I wanted to create a calculator over there. And the arithmetic operation that I did was 2 into 8. And the answer I was expecting was 16. Okay. But the point over here is, don't you think in programming, in order to create logic over there, we need to tell it what this data is, and where actually it has to store this data as well. Okay. So whenever we talk about programming, we must understand actually we are dealing with data over here all the time. We are manipulating that data, we are changing, doing lot of operations on the data depending on what my requirements are. So the first concept that we will discuss inside this JavaScript is how to store data, or how to create data actually. Okay. And then how to store. Guys, where do we store our data usually? We store our data inside our computer's memory. Okay. So we will talk about this memory aspect of programming of JavaScript maybe in our next class. But in today's class, we will see the first concept over here, which is called variables. Okay. Can anyone tell me in the chat? Meanwhile, I explain what variables are. Can you tell me what do you mean by variables? What do you understand by variables? Come on, quickly. In the chat, quickly, guys. I'm expecting few answers in the chat because I can see a lot of students over there from my batches. So, what do you mean by variables? So, in order to perform a task, as I told you, we need some data. We must store them in memory. But in memory, we must create those containers or boxes. Let's suppose. So, for example, I had to store 2 and 8 over there, right? So, we must tell it, hey, inside my container A, store this 2. Inside my container B, store this 8, and then inside the container C, store my result over there, which is 16 in this case. Then print over there my result. So how will I print? I will not tell it, hey, print 16. No, I will tell it whatever is stored inside the memory container C, get me the contents from that, and then it will display the 16. Which means variables are, if you ask me, the fundamental concept of every single programming language. Why? Because with help of these variables, you can actually store the data with which you want to perform the operations inside your memory under some aliases, under some names over there. So we simply create some containers in which we try to store our data. Since we are talking about JavaScript over there, we need to understand how we can create variables inside JavaScript. The first method, there are actually three methods that we use, three keywords that we might say. What do you mean by keywords? In every single programming language you will find lot of keywords. Now keywords are those words that we use in programming which have special meaning to it. Those keywords cannot be used for other purposes. Okay, they have special meaning to it according to my coding language that I am using. And whenever we talk about keywords related to variables in JavaScript, there are three. We use three keyword declarations with which we define our variables. What are those, guys, in the chat? Quickly. So we have var, we have let, and we have constant. Okay. So these are the three keywords that we use in order to define a variable, create a variable inside my JavaScript. But before I talk about them, we need to actually understand one very important thing. And what is that? Guys, I told you that whenever we talk about set of instructions, we call it a program. But also we need to understand one very important thing. We need a place. By place, I mean we need an editor over there in which we can write these set of instructions, right? If you don't write these set of instructions, is there a way with which you can, complete a task? Of course not. So we need a proper way to write these set of instructions. So I might show you a quickly, very importantly, a very important software that you all must install, and that software, guys, is called VS Code. What is the name of the software? It is called a Visual Studio Code. So please, you will find link of this particular software in the description later as well. But please and please download it later on so that you can write code yourself. So you can find your version, maybe Windows, Mac, or whatever your operating system is, accordingly download it. After you download it, install it properly, and you might find different tutorials on YouTube as well how to install it. But we will do that later as well. So you will get a software that looks like this. This is Visual Studio that I have opened, in which I will be able to write all the instructions that I have. Okay. The first thing that you will do is, whenever you talk about any programming language, okay, whenever you talk about writing logic in that programming language, you first of all need to set environment. By environment, I mean you need to set a place where you will write all of your code. We got the editor, but we need a place inside our memory as well, maybe inside our hard disk, where we will store all of our files, all of our code that we actually want to execute. So for that, what you will do is you will click on these three lines. If you don't have these three lines, you might have directly file over there. So on this file, please click on open folder. Okay. And then simply create a folder somewhere, wherever you want to create. It's completely up to you. Okay. So simply select a folder over there, and then you might please do one thing over here, open the empty folder. I have opened, a filled folder, but let me create a open empty folder quickly. Give me a second. So let me name this folder as LaMiCons, because all of the code that we'll be doing will be stored inside this folder, and I will share GitHub link of this folder as well. Now, what are we doing? We are writing JavaScript code. Whenever you have to create a text file, what do? You create a file with a .txt extension. Yes or no? Right? Similarly, over there, whenever you try to store an image, there's a proper extension that every file contains. Similarly, if you want to create JavaScript file, you have to create a file. You can click on this option, then you will write name, whatever name you want. It's completely up to you. Usually we write index.js. JS.js being the extension, which means now whatever I will write inside this, it will be considered as JavaScript code. Remember that. Okay. Now, guys, since we have created this file, we also need to understand one thing. What's that? Since we have understood that there are three ways of creating a variable, which means now we have a proper keywords over there with which we can store some data inside our memory. But the point ultimately is, even after writing all of these set of instructions, we must execute it. Okay. And every programming language, in order to execute that particular program, we must need its environment as well. I am not talking about editor over here. I am talking about environment, where that syntax which I will write. By syntax, I mean those instructions in that proper language, they must be executed, and we need an environment for that. Usually, when JavaScript was introduced in the initial days, and even right now, actually JavaScript is actually called as language of web, language of browsers. Why? Because JavaScript gets automatically executed inside your browsers. So even if you don't install this environment, it's completely okay. You can directly go to browsers. There's a proper way with which what you can do is you can execute this JavaScript. Okay. So there's a proper way. जो भी आपका browser है ना, whatever browser you are using, whether Chrome, Safari, Edge, there's a proper way with which what you can do is you can execute your JavaScript. But of course, we don't rely that much on browsers nowadays. We simply want that everything should be executed inside this editor that we have. So for that, what we will do is we will actually install an engine. Okay, what do you mean by engine over here? Maybe in our next class we might discuss that properly, but let's try to quickly understand what that is over here. Right now, if I go inside my browser, okay, if I go right now inside my browser, let me go inside my inspect. Okay, if you see, if you right click on any of the tab over there, you will find an option which is inspect. If you go on to inspect, you will find lot of things over here. You don't have to understand them at this point of time. If you directly go into console, it gives you some kind of editor. You will see I am able to right now type something over here. This is where your JavaScript will be properly executed. Okay, properly executed. So since we have not discussed at this point of time any line of code, so we will not write anything. But what I'm saying is, if this console is able to execute some JavaScript code, which automatically means my browser has something with which it is able to execute that JavaScript code. And that is nothing but an engine which every browser automatically has with it as soon as you install it. And similarly, we need to now install the same engine inside our laptop, inside our system, so that we don't have to depend on browsers to execute the JavaScript, but my laptop will have that engine so that it can execute it. And that engine, guys, is called Node.js. So everyone, please go to this website as well. I will add it to the description, guys, as well. Okay. And similarly, the VS Code link will be added in the description as well. But at this point of time, if you want your JavaScript code to be executed outside a browser, you must install this Node.js. So Node.js is nothing but JavaScript's runtime environment, which will allow you to execute JavaScript even outside of the browser. I have already pre-installed. Please install it after this lecture. Now let me go into the code, and now let's come here and now let's talk about the variables, which is the first concept that we are supposed to discuss. I already explained what variables are. Let me again, the calculator wali example, let's try to create that. So what will I do? I will tell it, please take number one. Okay, var number one. But before I take it, let me go back to my whiteboard and let me explain you how actually it is created. To create a variable, we need a proper syntax. What is that syntax? We have three keywords: var, let, and constant. From these three, what we have to do is we have to use any one. Although there's a proper difference as well, which we will discuss in few minutes. At this point of time, let me use var. We will write var, then we will write identifier. What do I mean by identifier? Let me tell you in a second. Now, if you remember the example, it was 2 into 8 and we wanted 16. So right now I will tell it whatever the identifier is. Identifier simply means what is the name of the container that you want to set. जिस भी कंटेनर में आपको इस वेरिएबल डेटा इस डेटा को स्टोर करना है ना उसका नाम. So it's simply like that. Identifier is nothing but name of that memory slot in which we want to simply store it, and there are proper rules to create an identifier over there, but later. Okay, so in this what I will do is I will store two, but of course I won't write identifier. I will write some variable names like a, like x, like num, or different things. Similarly, if I use let keyword, I will write let. Let's suppose a is equals to 8. If I have to use constant, I will use constant. I will say b is equals to 12, something like that, whatever I want, right? Please say yes or no in the chat. Is this clear until now? Quickly, yes or no in the chat. Quickly. Perfect. So let me similarly go over here inside my VS Code that I have, and let me simply create any variable with the name number 1 over here. And in this, I will store 2. Okay, 2 being the first number that I want to multiply with 8. Okay, similarly over here, I will define another variable which is going to be number 2, in which I will simply store 8. Now, what do we want? We want an arithmetic operation over there. We want to create another memory slot. If you remember, I told you that what we want actually is we want three memory slots. This being the num1, this being the number 2, this being the result that I have. In my number 1, I will simply tell it to store 2. In my number 2, I will simply tell it to store 8. In my result, I will simply tell it to store the multiplication of two numbers. So what will I do? I will simply create another variable because I have three memory slots. So let me simply create another variable like this, in which I will tell it whatever is inside my number 1, please multiply that with the number 2 over here like this. So what I have right now, I have simply three memory slots. Number 1 in which I have 2, number 2 in which I have 8. Result that actually stores the multiplication of two memory slots, number 1 and number 2. Now I have performed the arithmetic operation. Okay, I have performed the multiplication between these two memory slot contents. Now, of course, we would want to watch the result as well. Yes or no? Of course, we would want to check the outcome of this program as well. And in order to do that, we have to tell it over there, hey, whatever memory slot contains the result, print me that. And whenever we talk about printing any memory slots content, we use inside our JavaScript console.log. Okay, and I will tell it simply print whatever is inside my memory slot result. Now if I execute it, we know 2 into 8 is 16. So if I execute it, you can see automatically 16 in the output. So right now I am able to execute this JavaScript outside a browser. Did I go to browser? Of course not. I executed right here in the editor, and it is possible because of Node.js. So please and please install your Node.js first, and then you can start learning JavaScript. So we have properly understood what variables are. We have properly understood how you can declare a variable, how you can store a data at this point of time, only numbers inside a variable, something like that. But my question is, and can I again define it using let keyword as well? Of course. Even if I execute it will still be 16. Even if I define this with let, it will still be 16 over here. You can see that as well in the output, right? Even if I go over here, put constant, these three keywords, it will still be the same in the output. Now the question is that you might ask, sir, what is the difference between let, var, and constant? Let's try to understand that over here. So what will I do? I will erase all of this, although let me get it back and let me create a new file. So I will say variables like this, variables.js. Okay. And let's try to understand what is the difference between these three keywords. Okay. Let me define a first variable where a is equals to 10. Perfectly. Similarly, over there, where b is equals to anything. Let's suppose 20. Okay. Or although let's define only one variable. If I simply go console.log a, what will be the output, guys, in the chat? Come on, quickly. I am telling it there's a variable a in which I am having some contents. Print me that. So you can automatically understand console.log a is going to display what? In the chat, quickly. It is going to display the contents that are in variable a, which is 10. So if I execute it right now, it is 10. Perfectly fine. Perfectly fine. Very good. Very good. Now, since we already know that it is going to display 10 in the output, now we need to understand what is the difference between var keyword, let keyword, and constant. And remember, it is an interview question as well. People usually ask, whenever you sit in the interviews, people will ask you, hey, what is the difference between var, let, and constant? So you have to remember it over here. So understand it. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well. If I will update it, if I will say a is equals to 20, by whenever you write a syntax like this, you don't use a keyword over there. It simply means I am updating it. Okay, I am updating it. So now if I execute it, will the answer will be 10 or 20? So if I execute it, you will see 20, which means whenever you use var keyword, you can update it later on in the program. Maybe at the end of program, after 10 20 instructions, you want to simply update the contents of this var keyword. So of course you can update it. Okay, similarly, can I redeclare it? By redeclaring, I mean the same variable. Can I redeclare it with another content, another value? The answer to this, of course, yes. You can redeclare it as well. So you can still see 30. So पहले तो 10 था. First I had 10. Then I updated it to 20. But I redeclare it with 30. So I can definitely redeclare it whenever we talk about var keyword. But is this allowed in let? Let's try to see that. First of all, let me remove this. If I define a variable with let keyword, can I update it? Let's see. So if I execute it over there, you can see 20, which means in let you can update it as well. So as of now, the difference between var and let related to updation is completely same, right? But now if I redeclare it, so let me say let a is equals to 30. And now if I execute it, you might see a red mark over there as well. So if I execute it, you will automatically see it says identifier A has already been declared, which means whenever we talk about let keyword, it won't allow me to redeclare it. This is the first difference between var and let. Now, why is it not allowing? There's a proper explanation behind that, and that concept is called scope, but we will understand that after we complete functions, because we need to understand at that point of time, what execution context is, what call stack is, but later on. At this point of time, simply remember the difference between var and let is, with var keyword you can update as well, you can redeclare as well. With let you can only update but not redeclare. ओके, तो लेट में एक बार आपने डिक्लेयर कर दिया, दैट्स इट, वट एवर द कंटेंट्स आर, इट इज देयर. एंड इफ यू रीडिक्लेयर अगेन, देयर इज गोइंग टू बी एन एरर. But what will happen if with constant? So if I simply put constant, as the name itself says, I am constant, I am not going to change myself. So with constant keyword, you cannot even update it. Neither can you redeclare it. Neither can you redeclare it. So constant won't allow you to update, constant won't allow you to redeclare. So we have to, at this point of time, let's note down this difference, a basic difference between var, let, and constant. The first is, with var, can you do updation? The answer is of course. The same identifier can be updated. Can I do redeclaration? The answer to this is of course, you can redeclare as well. Over here, with let, can you update? Answer is yes. But can you redeclare? Answer is no. In constant, can you update? No. Can you redeclare? No. And guys, this difference that I'm explaining you, this is only 10% of difference. There's a huge aspect of difference that we have to see, but we will see that later on once we will discuss some other basic concepts as well. So the main difference between var, let, and constant is actually related to scope. If you don't know what scope is, ignore it at this point of time. Later on, I might discuss it in our next few classes. Okay. Now let's move a little bit forward, and now let's talk about another very important fundamental concept of JavaScript, which is called operators. Okay, operators. What do you mean by operators? Guys, let's suppose I have a data. Okay, for example, I had 2, 8. If I directly store them in variables, but if I don't perform an operation between them, is there any need of even storing a data? Right? The point ultimately is we want data. We, of course, want to manipulate that data. We want to perform some operations with that data. Right? So, what we need is we need operators with which what we can do is we can perform enhancements in our program according to our requirements that we have. Am I clear? Yes or no in the chat? Am I clear? Yes or no in the chat? Quickly. Come on. So whenever we talk about operators inside our JavaScript, there are a lot of types. Okay, 5, 6 types of operators, but I will only discuss basics. Okay, rest you can figure out on your own. The first operator that we are going to discuss is called arithmetic operators. Arithmetic operators simply mean the arithmetic calculations that you do on the calculator as well, same arithmetic operations over here. For example, you do addition, you can use arithmetic operator inside your JavaScript as well, which is plus. You do subtraction, similarly in JavaScript, division, multiplication. But there is also one another arithmetic operator that we use inside our JavaScript, which is called modulus. Now we need to understand what modulus is. Let me go over here and let me go back to my previous program. Okay, let me go back to my previous program, this program. You can see between this content and this content, between these two variables, I have performed an operation which is multiplication. So, and we also know inside my result variable, what it is going to do is it is going to return the multiplication of two numbers. And similarly, if I put minus, it is going to perform the subtraction of these two numbers. Similarly, if I put division, it is going to perform the division of these two numbers, and similarly other as well, right? But what does modulus mean? What does modulus mean? And let me please, increase this number. Let me store, instead of 2, let me store 12. Why? Because you will understand in a second. What do we mean by modulus? Tell me quickly in the chat, what do we mean by modulus? We know plus will return addition, minus will return subtraction, multiplication with multiplication, division with division sign. But when I talk about this sign, it's called a modulus sign, this percent. If you use percent between two numbers, it is going to return the remainder of these two numbers when first number is divided by second number. So if you look at this particular example, when I am dividing my 12 by 8, okay, let me divide 12 by 8. So 8 1 is 8. We know remainder is going to be 4. So when we talk about modulus, modulus will always return this particular thing, which is reminder. So if I execute this code over there, you will automatically see right now it is displaying 4. So reminders are very important because it is used very often in conditions as well. Later on, you will see. So this arithmetic operation is very important. What if I will make this particular number over here instead of 8, I will make it 12. So 12 divided by 12, what is the reminder? What is the reminder? The reminder, of course, in this case is nothing, which is 0, because 12 is perfectly divided by 12. So that's why you can see reminder being 12. So what if I will divide 13 by 12? We also know in this case a reminder is going to be 1. So you can automatically see reminder is 1. So remember it, whenever we talk about this percent operator, it is nothing but modulus over here. Let's move a little bit forward. There is one another operator that we call is called relational operator type. It's called relational operators. This operator simply provides relation between two operands, relation between two entities. For example, if I say 12 is one number, 8 is another number, what can you perform with these numbers? We saw arithmetic operations can be performed, but can't you do few other things as well? What's that? Is 12 greater than 8? Is 12 equals to 8? Is 12 less than 8? Is 12 greater or equal to 8? Is 12 less or equal to 8? Is 12 something else 8, right? For example, equal to, which we have already seen over here. So the point over here is these all actually are called relational operators, with which what we can do is we can find relationship between two operands over there. So we have greater than sign, less than sign, greater equal to, less equal to, and there are other two which we will see in a second. Okay. So let's go over here and let's try to understand these operators, and you will see what it returns. We know that when I say 13 plus 12, it is going to return integer only, 25. 13 minus 12, it will still be integer, number. 13 divided by 12, it will still be a number, right? But what will happen if I say number 1 is greater than number 2? So do you think right now it is going to return a number, or it is going to tell me a statement whether it is true or false over there? So if I right now see this, you can see it says true. So whenever we talk about these comparison operator, these relational operators that I'm talking about, they are actually returning boolean over there, either true or false. So if I say number 1 is less than number 2, if I execute it over there, you will see false. So we must understand, when we talk about these comparison operators or relational operators, we are expecting over there either true or false. And whenever we talk about these two things, true or false, it is called boolean data type, but we will discuss that later on. We all know that computers do not understand our language. Like whatever I'm speaking right now, you are able to understand because you understand English, right? You understand Hindi as well. So if I talk about English, if I talk in English or Hindi, you will be properly able to communicate with me. But if I try to communicate in English with computers, will computer understand? Of course not. We all know computers understand binary, which means zeros and ones. And when we talk about one, it is called true. When we talk about zero, it's called false over there. Okay, but let's discuss that later. Similarly, if I say less or equals to, you will see, if you can see automatically right now it's saying false. Okay, so if I similarly say greater or equal to, it will say true because that's true, right? So all these operators with which we can actually find a relation between these two numbers, whether it is greater or not. Although there's one another relational operators that we will later on see, which is called a double equal or triple equal. We will see it later on, assignment operators, something like that. But the point over here is these are also operators that we use inside our application. But the question that you might ask over here is, sir, why do we use them? Like, I know why I will use plus, I know why I will use minus, I know why I will use division, but why will I use it? We use it to create conditionals inside our system. For example, by that, what do I mean? I mean, I want to simply create a program. I want to check if my number 1 is greater than number 2, tell me adfar in the output. If my number 1 is not greater than number 2, tell me LaMiCons in the output. Which means the outcome of this program entirely depends on whether my number 1 is greater or equal to number 2 or not. In that case, we have to check whether the expression that I am writing over there with these comparison operators are true or not. So that's why we will use it, but we will do that later on. Am I clear, guys? Am I clear? Yes or no? Everyone, quickly. Perfect. So similarly over there are third type of operators which we called bitwise operator. These are very important. Okay, bitwise operators. Very important from the interview perspective as well. Like if anyone asks you, hey, what is bitwise operator? You must tell it and how it works. So this is what we will discuss now. The first bitwise operator is called AND. Second is called OR. Third is called XOR. Okay. What does they do? Again, I will write two operands over there. Let's suppose 2 and 3. Tell me what it's going to do. Maybe 4 or 5, what it is going to do. Similarly, 8 XOR 5, right? Which means this will be one variable, this will be another variable. In between, I might put these bitwise operators. But what do I mean by bitwise operators? As I told you few seconds ago, whenever we talk about computers, computer understand binary language, which means zeros and ones. So whenever, for example, if I write adfar, it won't take it as adfar, but it will convert it to binary, maybe 0 1 1 0 1 1, and there are proper rule sets how it will convert, but we don't have to understand that because we are here to understand JavaScript. So the point over here is whatever we write, it converts that into machine level code, which is binary. But these individual entities are called actually bits. For example, 0 is one bit, 1 is another bit, and there are only two types of bits that computer understand. One is 0, another one is 1. So zeros and ones are understood by the computer, right? So bitwise operators say that I am going to take these entities and convert them into their respective binary. Okay, so I will convert this into respective binary, this into respective binary, and then the bits that I will get over there, the collection of bits, I will perform operation one by one, not between this 2 and 3 directly, but between the binary equivalent of it. Now, how to convert a number into binary? Please, go through that and understand. Try to understand that. Maybe on different resources as well. I might, provide you one resource in the description as well. But now let's talk about this. What do I mean by and bitwise operator? Bitwise operator. Okay, and bitwise operator. Let's suppose I have two combination. Let's suppose there is a number n1, there's a number n2. Let's suppose n1 binary equal to is 101101, something like that. Okay, usually it's converted into 32 bit, which means there will be 32 bits, 101101, so on and so forth, up till 32 bits. Let's suppose n2 is also converted into, similarly 110011, something like this. Now in between I am performing an operation which is AND operation. So AND operation will be happening between these two bits, these two bits, one by one. But what does AND say? AND say whenever you perform operation between these two bits, if both bits are high. By high I mean if both bits are 1, then only output will be 1. So 1 and 1, both bits are 1, so it is going to be 1. 0 and 1, both bits are not 1, so output will be 0. 1 and 0, both bits are not 1, output will be 0. 1 and 0, both bits are not high, output will be 0. Both bits are not high, output will be 0. But over here, both bits are high, output will be 0. So if you perform an AND operation between these two entities, the outcome, of course, is going to be like this. Okay, let's suppose I have two numbers. What are the two numbers that I have? 13 and 12. I know what is the binary equivalent of it because I know how to convert it. Okay, so basically what we do is we write 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, so on and so forth. It gets powered over there, so on and so forth, right? So if I have to find 13, what is the binary equivalent of 13? I have to find addition over here of these bits. So 8 plus 4 is 12, 12 plus 1 is 13. So 8 will be high, 4 will be high, 1 will be high. Rest of the bits will be 0. So this is the binary equivalent of 13. Similarly, 12. If you see 8 plus 4 is 12. So this will be high, this will be high. Rest of the bits will be 0. You don't have to understand that. Ignore it if you are getting confused. Completely ignore it. But now we know that these are two convergence of these two numbers in binary format. So let me write it over here. So 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, 0, 0, and so on and so forth. Now let's do AND operation. So 1, 0 is both bits are not high, so it's going to be 0. 0, 0, 0. Both bits are high, output will be 1. Both bits are high, output will be 1, and rest of the bits are going to be 0. Similarly, now I have to find what this resultant is. So it's going to be 1, 2, 4, 8, which means 8 plus 4 is 12. So if I perform an AND operation between 13 and 12, the outcome, the operation that I performed on my screen, the outcome was 12. Now let's try to see whether it is going to display 12 in the output or not. So let me go over here. Let me put AND operator over here. And now let's see output. So if I execute this, you will automatically see the output is 12, which exactly we got as well. Am I clear? Quickly, are we able to understand what AND operator mean? Right? We use these AND logics inside our homes as well, right? Like between two switches. Let's suppose there's a scenario where you say, if let's suppose you have to turn on motor, okay, water motor, right? So what you will do is, let's suppose you are associating two switches with that. One is in the upper story, right, and another one is at the bottom story. So if both switches are on, then only your motor will be on. That's AND logic. Okay. Similarly, we have another logic over there, another operator, bitwise operator, which is called OR. Okay. You might find OR on your keyboard on top of enter key. Okay. So what is this OR? OR says if any of the bit is high, if any of the bit is high, the output will be high. You don't need both bits high. Either both bits can be high, only one bit can be high. But if both bits are low, then output is going to be low. So if I have two inputs, 0 0, in this case the output will be 0. If I have 0 1, output will be 1. If I have 1 0, output will be 1. If I have 1 1, output will be 1 as well. Why? Because over here one bit is 1, both bits are 1. So if any of the bit is high, output is going to be high. Similarly over here, now if I put or in this, I know it is going to be 13, most probably in the output as well, which you can see. Because we convert into binary, you can perform the operation as well, right? So these are bitwise operators that we have inside our JavaScript. Now there are other operators as well. There is logical operators, but this logical operators we will see in our next class. Okay, there are other operators which are called assignment operators. Okay, and other things. Although this logical operators is also very important, bitwise operators are very important, arithmetic we all the time use, this comparison or relational operators are also very much used as well. So give me a quick yes or no in the chat, and then we will wind up our today's session. But I have a small request to all of you. Please and please share this video with your friends and family. And in the description, I have pasted a link, Google Form link. Whosoever wants a certificate from this course, it is mandatory for all of you to fill that Google form and attend all the 6 lectures from this course. Okay, so let's meet definitely in our next class. But before that, please tell me in the chat, do we have any questions, and give me a feedback in the chat as well. Come on, quickly. Perfect. I can see form in the chat as well, so please fill that. Okay, please fill that. Come on, give me a feedback, give me a feedback. So we have discussed the introduction to JavaScript. In our next class, we will discuss data types. We will discuss, functions over there directly, and then we will see actually how JavaScript works. We have not seen how JavaScript works, guys. We have not seen that yet, but we will see that in most probably third class. Okay. So please and please attend all the class and fill that Google form. I am expecting everyone to fill this Google form, so that what you can do is you can get a free certificate out of this course. Okay, give me the feedback in the chat. Come on. Perfect, great music my soul. I guess you are Jishnu, right? Perfect. So I know there were some inconveniences when we started this session, but of course that won't happen in our next class. But no worries, we completed our class properly, right? So let's connect in our next class, guys. Thank you so much for joining. I will add all the installation links in description as well. And thank you so much for joining. Bye everyone. See you in the next class. Bye guys. Bye everyone. Bye.